All right, what do we got? Because we had a scramble of a day. We need to go through our order. We had Mr. Husseini on. We are now going to pivot into Israel, which, holy Jesus, honestly, this is all so incredibly, I mean, first of all, disgusting. If this pager attack on Lebanon had been committed against anybody in the West or against Israel, all they would talk about
terrorism. You hear the word terrorism
because
24/7.
This was a terrorist attack. Children, doctors, innocent civilians. They even had the pagers go off so people would take them out of their pocket, hold them,
put them in their face.
So people are blind. I think the Iranian ambassador to Lebanon, they say, has lost his eyesight. But I mean, pretty much everybody who was affected has had to have some sort of amputation.
Yeah, I don't know the exact totals, but I know there were 8, I believe, in the first batch of pagers, but then there was a second wave today that was other devices that killed, I think, 10 people.
Yeah, I think
and you've got hundreds injured by this, of course.
Of course. So that was the first one. And then I think, was this the second one? Update. This was today. 14 killed, 450 injured in Wednesday's attacks. Today, that was earlier today. So that's in the second attack. And in the first attack, 12 people killed and nearly 3,000 injured, 200 critically. So 2 different attacks on pagers, which Hezbollah had already shifted to pagers so that they were, more low tech, not as easily
hacked.
Hacked or followed because of GPS stuff. And it turns out that these devices, explosive devices, it wasn't even right. At first they thought maybe it was like a heating situation, but it wasn't. It was a remote detonation. They're saying
Israel
now
admitted it. They owned it. So they are behind this known terrorist act that is in violation of
the Geneva Convention, every international law of war. It is so appalling. And also, we all have, that's everybody. If, we see how they're reacting to protesters on campuses, and they're calling them Hamas and terrorists. So if everybody's a terrorist, right? Hezbollah is also the political leadership in Lebanon. Like, everybody's attached, just the way they were to Hamas in Gaza. They're attached to Hezbollah. Do you work at a hospital? Do you collect trash? Do you work in any sort of municipal function? You're part, then that's how they're going to tie everybody to Hezbollah and to being a terrorist.
Part of what makes this terrorism in the traditional sense of the word is that the citizens are terrorized now of all their electronics. Like, what is next? If Israel can openly plant bombs and equipment brought into certain countries, that makes that country unsafe. That makes all this electronics unsafe. So one of the companies is suing Israel for billions of dollars because they're going to be no one's going to buy their products.
Yeah,
because they were the ones that packaged or built some of the electronics. So, but none of that matters. And the U.S. is sitting here condoning this situation.
Oh, it's so disgusting. I mean, some of the headlines and even I did pull this clip, but Medea Benjamin is talking to a sitting member of Congress, asking her about her response to this terror attack. And this member of Congress looks at Medea Benjamin and says, "Do you have your pager on you?" Right?
Yeah, I actually pulled that clip too and uploaded it, and we didn't have space. But here, I have it up here. We'll show it just because it's
Okay,
so
good.
disgusting.
It's so
right?
disgusting, and I'm going to take off a couple right now. It'll give us.
You don't have to, but
Okay.
it just uploaded, so
Okay.
we're good. It just
right.
StreamYard processing slow.
It's all slow, but yeah, the headlines.
It was Senator Hageman. I don't know.
Yeah.
She's Republican, but it doesn't matter. Both parties could have said this, right?
100%.
Which we're still waiting for.
Well, okay. So the other thing was like,
kill the 8-year-old.
Sorry.
Kill the 8-year-old and 11-year-old. Huh? They self-defense what Israel did with the pagers and had the walkie-talkies. They killed the 8-year-old and 11-year-old. Huh?
She asked if we have our pagers on you. Why do you want them to explode? Is that what you're insinuating?
Yeah, are you threatening us? They killed an 8-year-old and 11-year-old yesterday.
I don't think murder and death is a laughing matter, man.
Yeah.
You find it amusing though, huh? Joking about my device is exploding and injuring or killing me.
I can tell you.
Wow.
I mean, it is so vile. The Forward, the liberal Jewish magazine, their headline was "Paging Hezbollah." Like, that's some joke. What was this? This was New York Post, which I know they're hideous, but like 2,800 Hezbollah terrorists. No, you can't say that they're all terrorists. And anyway,
you're committing the terror. If it's not terrorism, let another country do that to us in this country and see what we call that. What would we call that? All our elected officials, their pages blow up.
Your pages, your computer, your cell phone. Everybody I know has an Alexa. We all have smart TVs, which is why many of the people who develop this technology don't have it themselves. I disconnected all of our smart home things, Alexa and all that bullshit. I hate all of it, but I mean, it doesn't matter. Pagers are like the lowest technological device you could probably have.
Right.
And, if they want to get you, they'll get you. And then they will be applauded because they'll just call you a terrorist. That's all you need to do.
But I mean, look, we are a huge target for retribution and an act of terrorism here.
Yeah.
And if you don't think this factors into our lives just because we're living this comfy life, it's coming. It's coming. The chickens are coming home to roost in the U.S. from our actions right now in the world. And we cannot say we don't deserve it as a country. No individual does, but
right. But look, you saw, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, they'd be justified. I mean, you're doing this to them. This is the same thing. The people that are oppressed that you are doing things to, when they finally do the same thing back to you, you can't cry international law on them when you got away with it.
And this thing of well, they voted for Hamas or they voted for that regime, because they call it regime. So I always try to call Biden a regime because I want to use their own horrific language. But of course, we're all complicit. No, I didn't vote for Trump. I didn't vote for Biden, but we're a democracy. So on some level, and that was, when Osama bin Laden, his letter that went so viral on TikTok. And I think it had been published in The Guardian, and people, this new young generation found it, and they realized the things he was saying, even if you don't agree with the tactic of blowing up buildings and killing, innocent civilians, but everything that he said about U.S. complicity in the Middle East and the treatment of Palestinians was right. And so if you're going to make everybody in Gaza or the West Bank culpable, they're 100% everybody in the U.S. is culpable for what we do.
Exactly. It's the same playbook. They accuse other countries of what they're doing. We accuse them of terrorism. I mean, I watched the UN, the Israeli ambassador or whoever who spoke at the UN as a resolution against the resolution that passed.
Of course.
And what caught me was he's telling everybody, in the original Hamas charter. Okay, but that leaves out the part where that was 25 years later. They denounced things that were in the original charter. They called for peace, but you're still speaking to an audience assuming they're going to believe your bullshit about, because you said original, they're not going to catch the word original. They're just going to think in your charter,
Right.
they're calling for terrorism.
They'll give Kamala all the space to flip-flop because she got new information and now thinks fracking is really good for the environment. But Hamas actually changed their charter, unlike the Likud party that still says no Palestine and no two-state solution. And they did change to a two-state solution. However, after assassinating the lead negotiator, Ismail Haniyeh, they are now, Yahya Sinwar is saying, no, we are now all coming together to make sure that we end this nation of Israel. And the truth is, there are the lunatic settlers, a lot of whom, a lot of people in Israel have dual citizenship, right? So the people who call themselves liberal Zionists, they can go back to Europe, they can come to the US, people in Palestine, in Gaza, in the West Bank, in East Jerusalem, they have nowhere to go. So as Israel becomes more and more of a pariah, as more and more terror comes their way and war comes their way after what they've inflicted, and as their economy just completely shuts down, I think it's going to be a war of attrition.
I think so too. And how would we react if Chinese-made electronic devices start exploding all over the country? And there's a good likelihood something like that happens,
Oh, for sure.
It's
yeah.
So
yeah. And yeah, I mean, Saul, you're totally right. Ask the Native Americans how many peace treaties were honored. Every time you talk to somebody who's at any level of Zionist, they're like, well, why didn't they just accept the peace treaty? Why didn't they just accept? First of all, anytime it looked close to being accepted, either Israel would change the parameters of the peace tready or somebody would be assassinated.
Negotiating.
I mean,
blow up pagers in Israel. I mean,
by the way, when there was a ceasefire, Hezbollah stopped their rockets. So we do have some evidence that they would honor it.
And as a reminder, every peace deal was broken by Israel. Israel broke every ceasefire deal.
Yep.
They've admitted they broke them. Even with their Hasbara and bullshit propaganda, they've owned up to breaking them because they've been caught. It's so obvious that they have to admit that they broke them, but they'll justify why they broke it. But they broke all the deals.
Yep. They absolutely did. Okay, this is stuff we did not get a chance to talk about with Sam, but this UN resolution, the UN General Assembly adopts a resolution demanding that Israel brings to an end without delay its unlawful presence in the occupied Palestinian territory, and to do so within a year. I mean, can you imagine? I can't even imagine an hour in Gaza, like a year. We haven't even had a year since October 7th. Anyway, but the people voting against are the same horrible people, including the US and the UK. One of the things that this resolution does is if they are, this is the UN. This is not I think this is different, but by saying that Israel does not have a right to defend itself from the people it's colonized and over whom they dominate, right? So that's actually a huge deal. It takes away that talking point. Yes, if somebody comes into their space, which of course is still occupied state, but you can defend yourself from an incoming attack at that moment. They don't have a right ever to cross a boundary. Their only duty is to protect the people they're colonizing, not starve them, not slaughter them, not decimate every building, school, museum, library, hospital. And so I hate that it's all moving so slowly, but these legal proceedings, the hope is that it will then give the UN General Assembly no option but to do this uniting for peace that Sam wrote about, which is if the Security Council fails to exercise its primary responsibility for the maintenance of international peace and security, the General Assembly shall consider the matter immediately. They can use armed force when necessary to maintain or restore international peace and security. I mean, I don't know what their forces are like. And like, just the fact that we've gotten to this point is so devastating, but somebody's got to stop it. And everyone who tries is called a terrorist.
And somebody has to stop it. And the somebody is going to be all the Arab nations coming together against the US and Israel, which is what all the bomb makers want. The weapons manufacturers want that. All of our politicians are beholden to them at this point. Our safety be damned, because first they're going to go mostly for Israel. So that the US is safe on that front somewhat. But our politicians aren't operating out of their own interest even to get reelected. They're operating out of just pure allegiance to the money.
Yeah. I mean,
when they lose their office because they backed something unpopular, they'll just get a job as a lobbyist for the weapons manufacturer that propped them up this whole time. So there's no electoral win that will get us out of this.
No, not with these two parties for sure. And I mean, Kamala Harris was on another, I don't even think we pulled any because we watched her whole outrageous interview that we showed on Sunday, but she did another one and again was pushed about what policy is going to be different. And from from Biden, we haven't had a ceasefire. You've talked about wanting a ceasefire. You've talked about not wanting to kill innocent civilians. What's the policy difference? And all she kept saying over and over was, first of all, we need a deal. That's what we need. Like, that's it. And he said, I have to say, and now I need to go back because I was listening to it today and I don't even know who the interviewer was, but he kept pushing her on. He's like, but what about a weapons embargo? And she talks about the one delay of the 2,000-pound bomb. And she talks about how that worked, but not like this could end.
Yeah, but when they were talking about the delay there, the pundits said at the time it would have no material effect on Israel because it already had stockpiled enough big weapons.
Yeah.
So that was just fluff. Like that's garbage.
And even then they said Biden's Hamas, remember? Yeah, I know they did say that. I mean, I know we get so much disinformation. They say that, but then I do think though that if the US stopped supplying them, stopped giving them cover at the UN with their vetoes, stopped giving them weapons, stopped giving them money. I mean, they're 100% a client state, right? So like we could, and yes, maybe they could continue doing some damage, but
no, that
would end it.
My point was, if you stop for a week, but you resume funding, I mean, it's irrelevant because they don't, that little pause is nothing. So
it's nothing,
it's like 2 weeks before the election, Kamala could come out and say, we're not going to fund Israel anymore for 2 weeks. And then she wins the election. They're back to funding it full time. And she doesn't give a fuck. They can survive that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's when they'll do the big ceasefire. Yeah. I mean, in the end, it really is. It's all just about money. It's having an outlet, colonial post in the Middle East to protect our business interests. And, this new true death toll that came out, which I think has even been, the Lancet came out 2 months ago saying that it was probably 180,000. Now 200 plus Palestinians projected to have been killed by Israeli forces since October 7th. More than 95,000 people have been injured. At least 172 journalists, 885 health workers, 296 aid workers. And then this is just so devastating. The Gaza Ministry of Health just published 649-page document with the name, age, gender, ID number of every Palestinian killed in Gaza from October 7th to August 31st. That they have info for, because obviously there are people that they have not been able to identify.
This
So
is just the known list, and it's 14 pages of babies.
the first 14 pages are babies under 1 year old. You know, this is a war. I mean, this is a disgusting genocide, but it is also very explicitly a genocide of babies. This was just so devastating. What's in this bag of rice? A 10-year-old is in the rice bag. His name is Ryan Ibrahim Ghazi Kualidar. And that is all. I think it's a few ounces of his own child that he was able to gather up and put in that rice bag. You know, I just, every day. And then to see, this is in the West Bank. This isn't even where Hamas is. So all of that we know anyway is bullshit, but 5 Palestinian children are killed or injured on average every day in the West Bank since October. You know, so this is what Biden-Harris administration is feeling, you know, their big joyful campaign about. And he has not even reached out, by the way, to the American protester Eisner, who was there. It has been now how many weeks? Oh, whoops, that's the wrong one. Sorry. 2-3 weeks. Haven't contacted her at all. And of course, we've seen the difference in the way the State Department talks about 2 different Americans who have been slaughtered by Israel.
Yeah, and they're pretending that they don't know what international law is. This is a really short clip of the Pentagon being questioned on it.
Ethically speaking, as a military officer, is this a capability that falls within the ethical conduct of a war?
I'm not a lawyer. I'm not, again, going to do a spot analysis on something that we've seen in press reports. I just don't have any information to provide on that. So.
Don't have to be a lawyer. It's against international law. It's against the Geneva Convention. Everybody knows it. But sorry, I did just want to show, because this is how our State Department talks about 2 Americans, 1 killed by Hamas, supposedly, and 1 killed by Israel.
Hirsch was a young man known by his family, by his friends for his kindness, for being a gentle soul who loved traveling, who loved music. And of course, he was attending a music festival on October 7th when it was attacked by Hamas. As Secretary Blinken said this weekend, Hirsch Goldberg Poland is an American hero, and we demand justice.
Do you actually condemn the actual act of killing an American citizen protesting, you know, the aggression of, let's say, the Israeli occupation army? So you condemn the act of the killing itself. Do you condemn that act?
Let's just be very clear. Of course, we would condemn the death. The death of any American citizen is heartbreaking. But let's be just very precise and clear that I am not going to speculate on what transpired on Friday, as those facts and those processes are still being determined and adjudicated, and we're going to let that process play out.
Translation.
Subjunctive, yeah.
Yeah, we're going to not answer and let Israel investigate themselves, and then this question will go away, because there'll be many more killed by then, and then we'll just delay that question and delay that question, and Israel will tell us if they did anything wrong here.
Yeah. So, you know, that's pretty much all we have in Israel. Back here at home, the laws, the new guidelines on different campuses are becoming more and more stringent. In LA, we've got police arresting people, LA City Council considering paying former IDF soldiers to patrol its streets. That actually, I think, has been rejected, but UCLA or UC campuses are banning camps and face masks used to conceal identities. At Columbia, they hired Pinkertons. I cannot, and they're walking around like at a central casting with all blue and a binder that says Pinkerton on there. I know it's really small. And I will say it's kind of been amazing these last few years. Teen Vogue, of all places, has sometimes been, one of the few, corporate media coming out with, some like actual stuff. Pinkerton National Detective Agency, founded as a private police force in Chicago in 1850, quickly expanded its reach. Detectives initially focused on catching thieves and burglars, but soon became the bane of the labor movement for their work as enthusiastic, vicious strikebreakers throughout the Civil War era, and in the decades after. Pinkerton operatives left their bloody mark on strikes, protests, massacres, and gained a ruthless reputation for protecting the interests of capital by any means necessary. As one newspaper columnist put it, no man of refined sensibilities would enter the ranks as a hired Hessian of plutocracy, expecting to shoot down his brothers at the command of capital. So that is the ruling class's answer to all of this.
They're basically calling in strike busters to enforce the same thing, but now with kids and protesting. Yep. It's the same mob force. It's why we're going to see 1 million cop cities. It's coming.
Which also, all this, they talk about how Israel has the most advanced weapon technology in the world because they practice on Palestinians. That is the testing ground. That's their laboratory. And then they, give their technology to us or their tactics to us.
Well, let me tell you, I watched this big documentary on the drone warfare coming. Yeah. And the rebel forces around Israel are going to terrorize. I mean, truly, they're making $2,000 drones that it takes a $300,000 missile to take down a $2,000 drone. So do the math on how that works,
Yep.
Like the damage that can be done with these high-tech drones that are built super cheaply. Like Iran, for example, we stopped their missile production. So they put all their money in, and Iran has 1 million of these $20,000 drones, and their $20,000 drone can pull up right next to an F-15 fighter pilot and blow it up, undetected, and they're $20,000. And you think of these F-15s costing $1 billion, or not $1 billion, but mega millions, like, hundreds of millions of dollars for these planes. And they're taking them out with $20,000 drones, and they have like 10,000 of them or something. I mean, they have a whole factory of these things, and they're in big trouble over there in Israel, and they're going to see, and we're getting pulled into it because of our support. It's, I don't know. I'll try to find it. I will try to find it. It's an hour-long thing all about the weaponry being developed over there.
I mean, it's really, again, like that low concept, high return was 9/11, right? Like with all of our technology, like those sorts of things, that's why terrorism is so effective, because it can happen anywhere. It breaks the social contract. I mean, even if you're actually going by whatever, society is doing and condoning. But it is
sort of a way to push back against the bully, the big bully. You've got your little secret thing.
Yeah.
That's.
Yeah. I mean, it's really terrifying. They're branding, we know they're branding language as terrorism. They are back to Columbia, partially because it's my alma mater, but also partially because it seems to be like not the epicenter, but sort of the initial jumping off point, even though it's gone, spread across the globe.
They were one of the first colleges to have the police actions against them.
Yeah. And it's in New York City and all that. But I mean, at Teachers College, at Barnard, at Columbia, they are having new guidelines on, you can't present any worldview if you don't also present the opposite. Well, they don't really mean that, right? Like, do they really mean, well, P. Diddy was just arrested for this sex trafficking ring where he would rape women and keep them against their will. But on the flip side, like, no, they only mean it for Israel. Like that's the only place where where the US justifies genocide, and apartheid.
Yep.
One good bit, and then I know we're going to move on, is at MIT, the MIT Coalition for, oh my God, my eyes, you guys, terrible. The MIT Coalition for Palestine shares a major victory. MIT activists end the first American-Israeli weapons manufacturer partnership at a university. The Scientists Against Genocide Everywhere, SAGE, movement at MIT continues. And I wonder if it's because, maybe these are the people who are coming up with the technology. I have no idea, but good for them, because most of the other places that have gotten small victories, it's been, well, we'll have a commission, we'll talk about it, we'll vote, those sorts of things. Oh, Pat, is it just me?
Yeah, no, that was me.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yep.
The sad reality is that I think most of these colleges invested in weapons manufacturers because it's a great return on your money. It's a guarantee. It's like buying a federal bond almost, because look at what's happened in the world. Even if we're at a time of peace, we're going to find a reason to stockpile bombs and weaponry. So, all these schools, they did it out of their own self-interest largely, but then there's the confluence of all these Zionist interests embedded in our government, embedded in our schools. Some of these places reliant, and part of the Hasbara was, not Hasbara, but part of the Israeli plan was to capture institutions and make them beholden to the Israeli goals. And they've done that.
Yep.
And so now we're shutting down kids at colleges universally.
Yeah.
Almost. But kudos to the kids at MIT.
Kudos to them. And it's funny. Sorry, I know I keep saying, but the LA Teachers Union started talking about, this was last term, it was probably in the fall, divesting from Israel. And I saw a lot of parents, whoa, wow, now the LA Teachers Union is going to get political. And it's so funny. It's like the default is ignoring all the politics that's happening, because those politics are all happening. Like if you invest LA public school money in war manufacturers, that's political.
That's a political action.
Right?
Yeah.
But that, if you just don't talk about it, oh, forget it. And then as soon as you speak up, it's just like in the comments, anybody who fights back against the empire, that's the political violence. All the violence the empire does is not political.